Alright, that's got that going. Let's just check it's there. Alright, so now just got to find it. Live stream, basics 2. And there it is. Okay, let's just update the pop out chat. Where are you? Pop out. Good. Copy, minimize. Just give me a second. I'm just updating the chat window. Alright, good. Okay, just make sure that's updating. If that updates, I know it's all working properly. Right, so it appears to be there in OBS, which is good. I'll go back to here. It's showing up there, but it's not showing up where I need it to. Alright. Stream strength is not great though. Some strange well, kids are still off school, so that'll be really the reason what's going on there, eh? Should have known that. It's buffering a little bit. Okay, it's coming through. It's working. I'm just going to make sure I've got my map straight. Okay. Get rid of the sound. Ditch the microphone or earplugs. That's gone. All right. And we're going to be into the next one. I know people want me to answer questions on very specific things, but I'm kind of going in an order which makes sense to me. So that doesn't mean I won't answer your questions. It might just take a little bit of time. And also too, you can always throw out questions after I've done my presentation, and we'll see how we go. And if I can see that somebody wants to ask a specific question, then maybe that'll affect what I do next. My whole day consists on a Saturday of just shooting raw footage, and then I go through and edit everything. So what I've done is eliminated that process, and now you're getting everything raw, which is why I'm live streaming. I can go back through and edit these videos at a later date and tidy them up if I feel that they were all right or they were successful. That's essentially what I'm trying to do. What I'm going to talk about next is going to be the wizard's skills. And I know that sounds strange. It's a wizard, it does magic. Why are we talking about the wizard skills? Because I want people or the players to focus on the skills first before they jump into just casting spells. Because often that seems to be the case. They just go straight for, I'm going to cast this spell, and they don't do any kind of research or any kind of pre-planning whatsoever. Alright, let me just catch my breath, and I will get started and we'll do this. And I do have some examples, so I'm going to roll some dice today. It's going to happen. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and specifically we're talking about how to play Dungeons & Dragons or D&D 5e with the wizard. Now, skills are important in the game, and I think a lot of people bypass skills and when they're playing wizard go straight to the spells. But actually, when it comes to playing a wizard, skill checks come before everything else. It's actually more important than going through and just casting a spell. Make sure you use those skills before you start casting spells, so you know what you're doing. I'm going to be using the Wizard pre-made character sheet from the Dungeons & Dragons 5e starter set. I'm going to just roll it out in front of you. I'll put it over here for now so you can see it. This is pre-made. It's a level 1 character. I haven't leveled it up. And you can see additional information on page 112 of the Player's Handbook on the Wizard. And as I said, it goes into quite a lot of detail. The first thing you want to do with a Wizard, as I said, is make a skill check. And usually your skill checks are related to some sort of knowledge check. Wizards are proficient with a number of skills, and you can select 2 of these, either Arcana, and I've already talked about if you're playing a wizard and you don't have Arcana, what are you doing? Make sure that is one of the skills that you have. Okay? Make sure that Arcana is one of the skills that you have on your wizard. History, insight, investigation, medicine, and religion. And you will pick up other skills with your background, but I'm not going to go into that because that's too complicated. I just want to focus on the skills for the wizard that they are listed as being proficient with. There is one other skill I want to talk about, which is actually more important than all of the skills I just talked about, and that is perception. Perception is by far the most important skill for every single class you play in the game of Dungeons & Dragons. It's the one skill you will use the most. Absolutely guaranteed, it's probably the first skill check you will make when you play the game for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. And if you have an opportunity to become proficient with perception, I would do it, because you're going to use it so often. I've got a friend who talked to me about perception and the importance of perception and why he did not understand when people had the opportunity to pick up perception that they didn't. And I used to sort of say, well, maybe because they didn't want to have perception. And he said, it's the one thing you're going to do the most, so why would you not pick it up? Now, we don't want to turn everybody into a power gamer, but look at it this way. Perception means you are able to detect danger, traps, you are able to spot things that would harm or dispose of a normal creature or humanoid or human or other race. Heroes that aren't good at perceiving stuff don't live very long. They pass away and they are replaced by somebody else. So those ones that survive are usually the ones who spot the danger before it gets out of hand. So that's why perception is so important. Okay, so let's start with Arcana. So Arcana is your ability to recall a spell, how it works, magic items. Now, I'm not saying that it circumvents things like identify or detect magic. It does not. It allows you to understand a magical tradition, maybe gives you information on planes from the multiverse, or information on a monster that's not classified as, say, something like a beast, and falls into the realm of an Arcana check rather than something like a nature check or a religion check. So what does that look like? Let's make an Arcana check. I'm going to grab my 20-sided dice and we're going to add the modifier for our Arcana. These characters here, I'm just going to shuffle out of the way. That's a cleric, fighter, and that's our rogue for today. So our wizard decides to wander over here and is looking at the things on this table. I don't know if you can necessarily make out what's on this table, but it looks like a couple of bowls and flasks. There's some scrolls over here. Over here on this table there's a little notebook. I don't know if you can make it out. Just here there's a notebook. And they might be related to some sort of magical effect. So what you literally do to try to figure out what's going on with this diary, if you don't quite understand it, maybe not everybody understands what's going on. They might be able to read the language, but they might not understand what it's all about. There's also a bookshelf here. All these things you can use your Arcana to investigate and understand, particularly if they have a magic origin. So I roll a 20-sided dice, and I rolled a 12, and my Arcana modifier is 5. So 12 plus 5 equals 17. Now most of the checks that I would suggest a Dungeon Master set shouldn't really be 5s and 10s. I would go 15, 20, 25, 30. Otherwise, pretty much anybody can figure out anything if the DC for your skill check is a 5 or a 10. There's no reason why it couldn't be a 10, but it would pretty much mean that anybody could potentially make that check and still be successful. So try to push more towards a 15, 20 and upward. So in this case, this wizard explores or reads through the diary and discovers that it seems to be some sort of information on putting together magic related to necromancy, and it's a diary of somebody's experiments. So there's one way you could use your Arcana. Maybe we have a situation where there's a bunch of chests, treasure chests, sitting over here. So there's a couple over here, and the wizard is over here doing its thing, and of course somebody like the fighter decides to go over here, or even the rogue, and they go rifling through the chest. They don't wait, they don't try to do a perception check, which would have been sensible. Instead they go straight for it. What does that mean? Well, didn't realize it, but suddenly it's got a mouth. It's a mimic. It's an aberration, and there's a battle going on. The first thing your wizard should be doing once the fight begins is making a monster knowledge check. In this case, Arcana is perfect. So like I said, roll that 20-sided dice. I rolled a 10, add my 5 for Arcana, I get a 15, and that might tell me that this is a mimic. DC for 15 is sort of above, it's medium, it's above easy, it's not very easy, so you know it's a mimic, and maybe you know some very basic information like things stick to it. So it's a good idea not to hit it with something because it'll get stuck on the actual creature. So, monster knowledge check. There's your Arcana. Next is history. Now history is the ability to understand and recall information throughout history, historical events, things like that. I want to just give you a basic idea about how that might work. This can be related to all sorts of different things. Maybe the wizard recalls or tries to recall an important event related to necromancy, and one of the events that they remember is a lich who created a tomb called the Tomb of Horrors. It's very, very famous, and to know a little bit about that information, you would roll a 20-sided dice and add your history modifier. My history modifier, I'm not actually proficient, this character is not actually proficient. Does that mean you can't make a check for a skill if you're not proficient? No, not unless the Dungeon Master says no, you can't do it. There's nothing in the rules that indicate that you can't make a knowledge check on something unless the Dungeon Master says no, I don't think that's applicable. So history is a +3, roll my 20-sided dice, I rolled a 1. So 1 plus 3 is equal to 4, and unfortunately, in this case, the only thing the wizard remembers is something about a lich, but nothing else. All that other information is not available to them. They didn't even get a 5. Not getting a 5 means that pretty much, and getting a 5 is like anybody would pretty much know this. This is pretty standard, common information. Next check, investigation. Investigation is related to making a deduction based on clues. Now this could be trying to figure out how to disable a trap, not disabling the trap, but understanding how to disable it, understanding how a trap works, maybe finding a hidden item or object behind the bookshelf or a secret door. That sort of stuff might be related. All those sorts of things. So it's making a deduction based on facts and what you perceive. One of the very first things you need to do though is you need to make a perception check. Now the wizard doesn't necessarily have to make doesn't need to make the perception check. Sorry, the wizard doesn't necessarily have to make the perception check. Somebody else might notice the clues, but it's the investigation check by the wizard, and other people can do that as well. It's fine. That will help determine what that actually is hiding or what it might have been used for. So in this case, let's go for there's already been a perception check made over here by our rogue, and they've noticed there's scuff marks over by this particular shelf, but they don't quite understand. They know that it moves, but they don't know how to make it move. They haven't found the lever, the plug, the button, whatever it is, the mechanism that allows it to shift, but they know that it's been moved. And even though the whole party has come over here and made strength checks to try and move it, it won't move. So there's something up. It might be because there is some sort of fulcrum release. So you have your wizard come over here, make an investigation check, roll a 20-sided dice. I rolled a 6, add your investigation modifier, and that is 5. So 6 plus 5 equals 11. And I would say something that's hidden, I wouldn't set a very low modifier for that. I would say those things are quite difficult. 15, 20, I tend to set things that are hidden and hard to understand or work quite high. So even if you spot it, being able to understand how it works might be very, very difficult. Hopefully that is clear to you. Now there are other ways of utilizing investigation. Investigation might be that you all break up the room into sections, and you might make perception checks to notice stuff, but you might also make investigation checks to understand what you are inspecting. And that would mean everybody makes a check, including the wizard, who might get, I don't know, this quarter here, and the rogue gets this quarter here, and the wizard gets this quarter here, and the cleric's over here. And you can break up your room and use perception and investigation. Next skill, medicine. Medicine is one of those things that allows you to stabilize a creature who might be dying, or trying to find out if they're already dead, although that should be pretty easy. Should be a reasonably simple process. Stabilizing a creature is a medicine check, is a DC 10. It's very, very simple, and if you have a healer's kit, you don't even have to make the check at all. It's automatic. You pass it straight away. So if you don't have a healer's kit on your wizard, make sure you go and buy one as soon as you can. The other thing it can do is it can help you diagnose an illness or discern some information that you might have discovered. So while exploring this particular little area of our map, I'm going to shuffle us forward just a little bit. I'm going to move the map, so if you're wondering what's going on and everything starts to move, it's not because the wind is blowing really hard and everything's shifting because I didn't want it to. It's because I want to push this into view just a little bit more. Come here. There you go. Alright, straighten it out. Okay. Cool, that's better. I think that's going to be a little bit easier for you guys to actually see. I'll just wait until it's nice and straight and I'll continue. Alright, there we go. Cool. So while exploring, the wizard finds an odd jar, and it's sitting on this table. And by inspecting it, they discover that there is, well, they're not too sure exactly what it is, but it seems to be some sort of funny mass. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to make a perception check maybe, or maybe it's completely obvious. Maybe what's in the jar looks like a brain. In this case, it is pretty obvious. It's a brain. They want to know how long that brain has been in there, or maybe they want to know why the brain is actually in the jar. This could be related to something like a medicine check. Finding a dead corpse on the body, on the ground, medicine check might be related to that. It's like a forensic check in some way. So I rolled your 20-sided dice. I rolled a 4 in this case, not very, very high. And I add my medicine modifier, which in this case I'm not proficient with, but that's a +1. So 4 + 1 equals 5. So really, they don't really know how long the brain's been there, what its purpose is. Maybe that's unrelated to their particular specialty, and that's fine. But there's no reason why you can't make the check, unless your Dungeon Master says no. Just going to have a drink of water. Next, religion. Let's go with religion. And I really wanted to talk about religion as related to necromancy. So I'm going to shift the map again. I apologize for that. So with all of the investigation checks and the Arcana checks and everything that you've been doing with your party, the group passes through these purple clouds, explores this area, and they find themselves in this chamber right here. Alright, over we go. So here we are, and we're going to make a religion check. Now the reason we might make a religion check could be related to anything to do with lore or information about a deity or a god. It could be a rite, some sort of religious rite or ritual. It could be a prayer that they find sitting on this desk over here. Going over here, you find, say, a prayer. You don't quite understand exactly what it is, but you get an opportunity to make a check about it, provided it's hard enough that it's not simple common knowledge. Or maybe you find a holy symbol of some kind, and you get an opportunity to try and identify what that holy symbol is. Other things might be related to religious practices. Maybe you watch somebody's practice, their religious practice in a church or a temple, and you're able to sort of break that down and understand how that works and why they do it that way, and what deity or religious sect it belongs to. So we're going to make a religion check, but this time I'm going to have this pile of bones here. Before they get a chance to sort of make a perception check, which we will make a perception check at some point, I will roll one, we have a pile of bones, and out of those pile of bones erupts some skeletons. So I'm going to place some skeletons out. Drop, 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 drop. And now I'm basing a lot of this on monsters rather than on something else. And I suppose that's not just to get you to focus on something like combat, but also to give you, it's easier to demonstrate with something that's solid. So that's why I'm tending to use those things, and also to push the characters and the players towards making a check related to something that they are likely to be exposed to, so it becomes sort of second knowledge. So I'm going to move this across, and this time we're making a religion check, because these are skeletons. Now, skeletons are usually not just, they don't just roam around. It's not a natural creature. Usually they are created by magic. So you could use an Arcana check to make a knowledge check about a skeleton, but you could also make a religion check, because often that's related to something in that field, and maybe it's related to that. So we're going to use a religion check for this situation. So you roll your 20-sided dice, and you add your religion modifier, which is a +5 on the character sheet for this particular character. So I roll my dice. I rolled a 14, add my 5 equals 19. 19 is very high. So when they erupt out of the pile of bones, your wizard knows that they are skeletons. And skeletons, they've got a reasonable armor class. They're not fantastic. Often they'll have shields and primitive weapons. They don't have a huge amount of combat prowess. They tend to just do what they have been already commanded to do. So maybe they've already been given an instruction. They'll just follow that instruction on till its end, or until they are destroyed. Skeletons aren't really, don't really understand or concern themselves with being destroyed, because they are undead in nature. And you would be able to pass that information on as the wizard. You got a 19, that's pretty high. You might also be able to tell the party that they are vulnerable to a particular type of damage, so bludgeoning damage. So this is a good time to pull out all of the clubs and maces and get to work on those skeletons, so you can break them down into little pieces. So one way you can make a religion check. Next, let's move on. Let's say they were about to get into a battle, but lo and behold, there was somebody else in the room. And I'm going to place this fella. He's got like, I don't know, what is it, 3 heads. This is our Necromancer. The Necromancer was invisible, became visible, and this is an opportunity. Maybe there's a role play that takes place, a conversation takes place, and during that conversation, the fight doesn't erupt, but the Necromancer states that he would like them to leave. He's not going to attack them, but he would like them to leave, and to do so right now. Now, this is a good opportunity to use what's called the insight check. The insight skill allows you to speculate on a creature's motives or intentions. And that means you can try to, it's not always completely accurate, but it gives you an opportunity to try to pick up body language, mannerisms, anything in the speech that might indicate that they are lying or telling the truth. It doesn't give you super accurate information. It's still going to be fairly primitive in nature, but you can still give it a go. So let's make a check. Let's make an insight check to see if we can trust the Necromancer, this strange 3-headed skeletal figure who's just appeared out of nowhere, that they won't get attacked, that they can leave, that there isn't some other trap waiting for them. Okay, turning their back would be a bad idea. Let's see if we can trust this particular Necromancer. Roll a 20-sided dice and add your insight modifier. The insight modifier is a +3. I rolled a 15. I add my 3 equals 18. 18's pretty high. Now this is usually going to be contended by a deception check by our Necromancer. I'm going to roll this dice to represent the Necromancer. I'm not going to say the Necromancer is particularly good at lying. I'm going to say this is going to be a flat roll. So whatever rolls on the dice, it has to be either equal to, okay, or less than for the wizard to be successful. The wizard got a 18 for the insight. So it's a 5. The deception by the Necromancer is a 5. So it's very, very low. You have to score with a contest. You have to get greater than. You can't get equal to or greater than. You have to get greater than. So if I wound up rolling an 18 on my check, you wouldn't necessarily pick up any mannerisms or body language that would indicate that the Necromancer was lying. But in this case, he rolled a 5, so he gets a deception of 5, 18 on insight. So you notice that the heads on the Necromancer are sort of moving around. It looks like it's trying to fidget. It's not sweating because it doesn't sweat, but there's some sort of body language giving it away. So you know you can't turn your back on this Necromancer, and those skeletons may very well attack you. There's another way of using your skills. Right, let's get back to the very last one, which is the perception check. Now the perception check is not a skill that normally a wizard is proficient in, but on the character sheet for this wizard, it is, because it is an elf, and an elf gets proficiency in perception. So we're going to use that. I'm going to get rid of these things. Just give me a second while I shift that all out of the way. And I'm going to say, okay, there is some sort of battle's taken place. Either the skeletons have been destroyed or they've run away, who knows. Necromancer's disappeared. It's at this point that maybe everybody decides it's a good idea to make a perception check to check for traps in this location. This location could potentially have something waiting for them that isn't very nice. So to do that, we're going to make a perception check. You roll a 20-sided dice and you add your perception modifier. For the wizard, it is a +3. So I roll my dice. I got a 13 on my dice. I add 3, and that is equal to 16. So maybe while exploring the location, the wizard finds over here by these sacks. I don't know if you can necessarily see the sacks on the picture, but over here notices that there's a little bit of metal sitting underneath the sacks, and it almost looks like there's a tooth. So that's an indication that there's something hidden there. So as a wizard, you would not go and explore and try to deal with that. But you could make an investigation check. We've already done an investigation check. And maybe you've discovered that it's actually got a bear trap. There's a bear trap waiting there to go off. And that's when you get your rogue to come in, because wizards aren't very good at dealing with traps, and also too, it's far too risky. You always get your party members to deal with any kind of significant threat, otherwise you're going to wind up with no wizard. It'll wind up sleeping in the ground 6 feet down. Okay, so that's everything. Now, if you found this helpful or useful, please share and like the video. That's helpful to me. If you're not already subscribed, then hit the subscribe button if you want to get more videos like this. If you have any questions related to this particular topic, I'm going to answer those questions after the live stream. Once this is published, and it will get published, I'm going to answer any questions you put in the comments. If you need to ask me questions later on, that's not going to be a problem. I will deal with that as well. If you want to support my channel, by all means, keep watching my videos. That's really helpful. I get a little bit of ad revenue from YouTube or AdSense. But if you're really serious about supporting me, I do not do Patreon. I feel like it's too much of a ripoff, and I don't want to lose control of the content that I make. So if you want to support me, usually in the description you will find a link to Amazon or some other affiliate online marketing, and you can purchase whatever I've linked to, or click the link, go somewhere else, buy something else, and I get a small commission and you pay exactly the same price, and you're supporting my channel while you do that. If you don't buy online, just don't worry about it, it's fine. So I think I've covered pretty much everything that I needed to. I do want to reiterate that I usually do videos every single day. In this case, I'm actually doing a whole bunch of videos all at once. So you're going to wind up, it's New Zealand Standard Time on a Saturday, so I've got a bit of time today to keep pumping these things out before I either lose my voice or I run out of time. So don't go away, because I will still hang around and answer questions at the end of the live stream, but I'm going to sign out and then we'll go from there. Until next time, keep rolling those 20s. Alright, let's have a look through the questions and the comments and deal with everybody's stuff. Okay, skills are super important, yeah. Yes, you are right. That's good. Lego C, this live will stay in YouTube. This live will go to stay in YouTube. Anything that is live streamed goes to YouTube. I've just set it so that it is unlisted or private until I'm ready to release it. So those of you who are watching the live stream are seeing it, but once the live stream finishes, it'll go into my bank of live stream video, so I can muck around with it and get everything tidied up before I publish it. Bally's, oh gosh, I always have trouble pronouncing that. You should also talk to the GM. I use investigation to check for traps, not perception. So these two are equally important. Also, yes, the saves. Yes, I save it on live stream. Yeah, I know some dungeon masters do use investigation to actually allow you to search your location rather than perception. That's really up to the dungeon master. It's perfectly within their parameters and how they run the game. Perception really is related to your senses, your smell, your sight, your hearing, your touch, and if you want to avoid having to have 2 checks made, then use just investigation if you feel that will be helpful to you. I tend to go with perception because even if they are able to perceive or notice a clue, they may not be able to understand how to deal with the clue. And that is why I tend to use both. Also too, I run a YouTube channel where if I don't do things as much by the book as possible, it's really hard for me to communicate that information to everybody who's watching my stuff, which is why I tend to break it up into 2 checks. But you don't have to do that. Okay, what else? I see I have everyone use investigation to look for traps, or active look for insight is what I have them use to try to disable it. Yeah, insight is more about motivations and intentions of a creature. They are the body language, the intonation, the tone of a monster or creature or animal. They allow you to sort of understand that sort of stuff. Perception is passive for hearing things. No, passive perception is a tool that the Dungeon Master can use, and I encourage you to use it because it does save on dice rolling. It's really where you aren't pushed. So if the player isn't pushed for time, they would make a passive perception check. And really, the Dungeon Master will call for that, not the player saying, I'm going to use my passive perception. It's a tool that a DM uses. You might also use a passive perception check for a situation where you do not want the players to roll the dice. I just rolled a perception check, but you might not want them to know the numerical value, because then that gives them an idea of whether they were successful or not, and somebody else in the group might decide, I'm going to roll a check as well because I can see they failed that check. You may not want them to actually know what the check modifier is required to spot anything. And you don't want them sitting there rolling perception checks forever, particularly if they don't have time to do so. If they do, then you wouldn't even bother asking for a perception check. If they're going to say, look, I'm going to spend 20 minutes and search this entire location from the ceiling to the floor, then why would you bother using a perception check at all? Yes, a lot of this is up to personal preference on the Dungeon Master's part. If you have a look on the section on ability and skill checks, it does sort of break it down and explain how investigation and insight are used. I do feel like it was unnecessary to have the investigation skill in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, but it is there, so whether you use it is up to you. Keanu, what do you got here? I wish I can stay and learn, but I got to go. Keanu, it's not a problem. It's going to go up at some point during the week, so don't worry about it. It's not gone. Okay, just because you weren't able to be here for the actual live stream doesn't matter. It's Saturday in New Zealand, yes. You can just call me Lel. Okay, I will, Lel, thank you. Everyone else does, okay. RJ Bates, you've got here, basic question about spell casting. When or which spells should a DM use as an attack roll to see if the spell hits its target? Look, there is a modifier on this particular character sheet, and it's a +5, and your spell attack, if you use spells to make attacks with, is going to be based on your proficiency bonus. So add your proficiency bonus to the spell casting ability modifier that you use for that class or that creature. In this case, the wizard uses intelligence, and their modifier is a 3. So 3 plus the 2 becomes 5, which is why we have an attack spell modifier of +5 on this character sheet. Most of your monsters, if you are the DM, are going to have that listed on their character sheet, in the stat block, should I say. In the stat block for the monster, there'll be a section that breaks it down into DC, that's for making saving throws. They don't make the saving throw, the monster doesn't make the saving throw. Whoever's affected by the spell makes the DC saving throw. But when it's an attack roll, you roll that dice, and you roll a 20-sided dice, and you add your monsters or stat blocks spell attack modifier to that. That's how it works. Very simple. RJ, the spell itself will tell you as well. That will make a ranged attack or a melee spell attack. Here, there are 2 different types of attack spells. One is a ranged one is a melee. One is up from distance, one is up close. Is there any other questions related to skills? I think we have caught up with all the questions, and if there's no more questions, I'm going to go have a rest and come back in a little bit later and do the next part. Yeah, Touch Attack was an old version of Dungeons & Dragons. Touch Attack, it's still described as a Touch Attack and a lot of the spell descriptions, but if you're thinking about the 3.5 touch attack, it's still attacking the same armor class. There's not a different armor class for that particular spell. Okay, alright, it looks like there are no more questions. I'm going to head off. I'll be back in about half an hour to an hour to do my next segment. And you guys have a drink of water, have some food, go to sleep if it's late where you are, do whatever you have to do to keep yourself going. And yeah, we'll see you shortly.